Hello SuperCoaches, welcome to our preview podcast, round 16. Huge Origin clash last night and a huge morning pulling together all the late mail from the game. We'll have that coming in a sec. Max Bryden is here, he's our draft man, he's our early mail guy. What do you think of the game last night?
G'day Tom. Look, as Miss Rachel told my toddler at 2 o'clock this morning via Netflix, big feelings are okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really boring first half. There wasn't a lot of footy in play, and I just didn't necessarily feel like Origin, but the second half more than made up for that. A little bit disappointing when you get a game as good as it was and it feels like it was decided by kicks and ill discipline. But great spectacle in the end. Just a shame the result didn't go the way I wanted it to.
I always hate it when a team scores more tries than the other and then ends up losing the game. That was a disappointing thing for me. Plus Valentine Holmes, who can barely kick a ball through the posts for the Dragons, particularly at Wynn Stadium, comes out and just slots everything for the Maroons.
Yeah, well, he was awesome. Munster was awesome as well. He had, the knock on Munster, particularly for SuperCoaches, is that some games he can go to sleep, and it's usually when the Storm are doing really well. But obviously the stakes were high last night, so he turned up and he was fantastic. Yeah,
as captain, he was sensational, and hopefully he backs up. They do tend... If they've had a really good game in Origin, the coaches generally like them to back up. So hopefully we get Munster on the field for the Storm this weekend. Lots of big news. So there's breaking news that has just gone out on the Code, Daily Telegraph, Courier Mail websites, or in the news section of your SuperCoach app. That is that Payne Haas was almost ruled out. They only found out he was playing just before the game started. It was with a groin injury. He still came out and played well, and I thought he was one of the Blues' best, except for that little error at the end. Having said that, I don't think he backs up for the Broncos this weekend. He'd be at very prohibitive odds to play this weekend.
Yeah, well, looking into the history of Haas post-Origin, he typically will back up after 2 of the games and have a rest after one of them. But he's also not a human being. There was absolutely zero evidence of any injury last night. He was one of the Blues' best. He usually is. So all of the common sense in the world tells you that he won't play this week, but you just don't know with him in Brisbane.
They've got a pretty decent turnaround time, so who knows? He could
First game on Sunday, up against Cronulla. Big game they want to win. The latter position probably wants to put him in, but... Geez, you just don't know what you're going to get with Haas.
Yeah, I'm predicting that he won't play, and I'm planning for him not to play.
Yeah.
And then on Sunday, have him as a reserve, or have him not as a reserve, and then hopefully you can flick the reserve to him if he does take the field. Nathan Cleary, so obviously didn't look too good in Origin, particularly in the first half. His groin seemed to warm up a bit in the second half. But the news on him is that it's a groin injury. He did it at training on the Tuesday, so the day before the captain's run. He did it in front of the media and somehow managed to hide it. There was a media scrum there when it happened. So they did well to hide it, but he'd be, I know he's not named this weekend, but he'd be unlikely to even play the weekend after that. And even if he does, would he kick goals?
Yeah, I don't think he will. I think that we saw a case of a similar injury, and credit to NRL Physio for this one, of Nico Hines with a similar groin injury earlier in the year, and he didn't kick, but he did play. But I think with Cleary, at best case, he's playing one of the next 3. His break-even's 115. If he does play, that game's against the Canterbury Bulldogs, who, heard of them, renowned defensive outfit.
Yes.
It's not looking good for him to survive in my team this week.
So just looking at the stats in SuperCoach today, and if you've got SuperCoach Plus, you can look all this stuff up. But Cleary has gone from being a relatively popular sell to being the second most popular sell pretty quickly after this news of the groin injury. You've got Jerome Hughes just sitting there, so Cleary to Hughes, I think I'm going to have to do it.
Yep, yeah, I like that move. I think he's a good sell, and I love Hughes as a buy.
Yep, nice and concise. Brian, so he didn't train until Saturday with the Origin team. There is some chat that he may not even have taken part in captain's run. Then came out, scored 3 tries, was one of the best on the field. But he's got that lingering hamstring issue. He's not named this week. It's big enough for me to basically say I'm not going to have Brian Tuoyo in my team at all this year because he's a resting candidate at any stage. Yeah,
it's again another guy who played like he wasn't hindered at all. Finished well, brilliantly for his 3 tries, but also just ran for more than 200 metres, as we know he loves to do. I think on Tuoyo, he will become a pod post-Origin, which I know will tempt a lot of people because we've seen him be a Supercoach gun of years past. The thing that's probably counting against him in the long term is that he's playing on the right edge, whereas all the tries for Penrith are coming down the left edge this year. But yeah, I don't think anyone can seriously look at him until probably post round 20 at the earliest, given how he's going.
Tino for Asamoah, there's no real fresh news on his sternum injury that he carried into Origin camp, but the 44 minutes were encouraging. That's probably about what we were expecting for a Maroons team. He plays more than that for the Titans, obviously. But only 58 metres. It's not like it was a big metre-eating game or anything like that, but somewhat worrying. I'm a bit worried that he won't back up for the Titans this week.
Yeah, and I think if he doesn't back up, that's probably best case, because he's sitting there at 699k with a break even well over 100, and the last couple of games that he's played for the Titans as well, his base has been right down. It's gone from typically in the mid to high 50s to in the low 40s. And his last game for the Titans as well, he played significantly less minutes than normal. So as it stands, he is the top 2 player at 2RF this year based on his current output. But the sternum injury in the last couple of weeks, there could be a little sneaky sell, I think, on him, particularly given his ownership. Top 1%, it's over 80% of all coaches.
Yeah, I don't hate it as a sell. I'm gonna hold, but I won't be putting him in my 17 no matter what.
Yep.
Even if he plays for the Titans this weekend, I've got cover with someone like Hosking or maybe even Horsburgh to come in. Horsburgh will be absolutely smarting after missing that Origin team. So I'd prefer to go with him instead of Tino this week.
Yep, no, I agree on that. And for me, it's Riley Smith. I can chuck the reserve on Riley Smith if I need to in that last game.
Nice. On to Zack Lomax, Jerome Luai first. He's been cleared, so only a fine for that alleged eye gouge. Zack Lomax, he got cleared for that elbow on, I believe it was Trent Liero.
It was, yep.
He's clear to play this weekend. They've got a pretty big turnaround. I think they play Sunday. Plus, after that goal-kicking display, I feel like he'll be desperate to get out onto the field and make amends for that. So I've got a sneaky feeling that he'll play with no mail whatsoever. It's just my opinion. I think you can almost lock him in.
Yeah, I hope he plays because I bought him up in round 13.
Yeah.
But I would just say on Zack Lomax, I feel that those 5 weeks or so that he had off with that foot injury has probably impacted his match fitness more than he's let on.
Yeah.
His last 2 games for the Parramatta Eels, he's only had 1 tackle break. Yeah. He's still making a huge amount of runs, but those runs just aren't as effective as they typically are. And I think that is his match fitness catching up with him. So I think he will play. I think, though, that in his current level of fitness, his ceiling's probably a little bit capped.
Yeah, he's looked a bit gassed in those games, particularly at the end too. Mitchell Moses, we knew this before Origin, but he is out for up to 6 weeks, which is a big blow for the Eels.
Yes.
Kalyn Ponga is an interesting one, and you wrote this in your backup Raider story, which was a great read on our websites. Ponga has no travel. He does not have to move. He just has to go a couple of Ks across town because they play in Perth this weekend against the Dolphins. So you would expect, even though he is carrying this ongoing ankle injury, I would expect with the Knights in the position that they are, that he would back up.
Yeah, that's it. The game's on Saturday. He's got a couple of days rest. I'm sure he'll go down to Scarborough, down to the beach, have a swim, a paddle around. I mean, it was raining in Perth last night, which feels weird. I never associate that with West Australia, but I think of the 2 people out of that Origin fixture, him and Hammer are the best odds to back up, given that short trip across to HBF Park for that game on Saturday Arvo.
Connor Watson, only 19 minutes, so hopefully he can back up. He's still pretty popular in Supercoach. And then finally, Cameron Munster. I think just because he played so well and got man of the match, they usually tend to make them back up after that. So he'll be on a high. I think I'm hopeful that he will play this weekend. With no mail whatsoever, I'll point out.
I think mail's probably going to be the crucial thing to get on him. And in the backup radar as well, we mentioned that we don't have any precedent for what it's like playing after a Perth Origin game, because the only 2 other games over in Perth instead of Origin have been on a Sunday in a standalone representative week that they had for a couple of years during COVID. So we don't know what it's like coming back from a game on a Wednesday and 6-hour travel. So yeah, fingers crossed if he does play. But if he does, even that, look, they're playing South. Souths are depleted. This is exactly the kind of game that we see Munster check out of. And he's 700k with a huge break even. So it's a tough one for coaches to deal with. I'm glad I don't have that headache.
So trades this week, and I'll use this segment to point out that Keon Matangi There was some chat that he could miss up to 6 weeks. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case. He is now week to week. He did train. I'm not sure how much contact or anything there was in that training session on Tuesday, but it is a good sign. He's on the extended bench. He's the second most sold player. I'd be reversing that trade. I won't be selling Keon Matangi this week. What are your thoughts?
I think you have to hold. Yeah. I think because there's no one in second row who can score as well as him. Since he's moved to prop, he's become the number one second rower in all of SuperCoach. Yeah. And if it's not this week that he's playing, based on all of the news that we've gotten this week, it'll be a very good chance that it's next. And if it's not next, it'll be round 18 when you absolutely need as many numbers as possible because of the Origin bye. So he's the world's easiest hold to me. There's no one who comes close to matching his output, so I think you've got to keep him.
Yep, he's definitely a hold to me, and I'm certainly selling Hamoli or Locker R2 ahead of him. I don't own Adam Fanua-Blake. I've been looking for a reason to bring him in all year, and it's just never quite happened for me. So this is the perfect opportunity to do it. Even though he does have that bye in round 18, I should be able to cover it. So he's in, and I will go Cleary Hughes after this news that's come through today about that groin injury and the severity of it. I think that's basically a given.
Yeah, nice. Well, firstly, I think we could talk for a week on the best replacements for Hamoli Kawatu. I'm an owner as well. I'm holding until next week because for me, I prefer the guys that are going to be playing in round 18, albeit I do think AFB is a solid enough replacement. But on the Cleary Hughes, I've had this one penciled in for weeks anyway, just more on the availability of Cleary. It was meant to be 1 of 3 weeks. The injury just gives me confidence that it's the right call. Not that you'd expect the Penrith Panthers of 2025 to be kicking too many goals against the Bulldogs next week, but it looks like he will not have the kicking based on the precedent that we saw from Nicho Hynes with a similar injury. So just one trade for me this week. I'm down to 13 before this week, and that will be Cleary to Hughes for me as well. One thing I'll just mention on both of those halfbacks as well, it hasn't really been a year of the halfback, but when you take out the injury-impacted games of Cleary and Hughes, their averages look a lot better. Cleary's jumps up to 82 when you take out his concussion-impacted game.
And I captained him that week.
Yeah, well...
I haven't forgotten that, that's for sure.
I'm sure your ranking hasn't either forgotten that. And Hughes, his average jumps up to 72 as well. Right, so all of a sudden, instead of this grouping of halfbacks that we've got around that 65 to sort of 69 averaging there, it's Cleary and Hughes number 1 and 2 when you take out those injury-impacted games. So I want to get Cleary back, hopefully post-Origin, and he's healthy. But Hughes, I think, is a no-brainer. 609k for a guy who's averaging 72 is great value. Yeah,
Hughes I could even hold for the rest of the season. It may not be a factor of a case, rather, of going him to Cleary later on. It'll probably be Hynes to Cleary later on. And hold Jerome Hughes because the Storm have finished all their buys. So he should play for the rest of the season, although the Storm are prone to resting players at the end of the year. One of my favourite segments, who are you avoiding this week?
My no-go zone is a guy who I think is in the top 5 most brought in, and that's Herbie Farnworth. Now, it's very easy for me to sit here and say that because I own him. I bought him in round 12 as my Carraz replacement, but for $815,000, I don't know if you're necessarily getting the value for what you're buying. And he's going to go up as well. He's going to be even more expensive next week, but he doesn't play round 18. And Newcastle are a very good defensive side. He's had the benefit of a really soft draw of late, albeit the Dolphins are playing like the Harlem Globetrotters, essentially.
So
like they're amazing and they could put 50 on anyone. But I just think for his price at the moment, you can spend your money elsewhere and get better value. You're essentially paying for that 83 average, which is great, and it is obviously what he's achieved so far this year. But I think I'd be waiting until after round 18 and getting him hopefully when he's a little bit cheaper.
Look, I own him as well, but I do feel that he's probably done his best work already this year. So I tend to agree a little bit, but I'm a happy owner. Mine is also at the Dolphins, Jack Bosstock. I find a little bit strange. Yes, the BE is minus 72, but he's also pretty expensive as well. It's a short-term play to make a bit of cash. If I was going to make a bit of cash, and we'll get to the cheapie segment in a second, but I reckon there are better guys. We'll speak about them, but Karapani could be one of them. Talakai, maybe Jed Stewart, take a flyer on him. I'd be going all those guys ahead of Jack Bosstock this week. Yeah,
Jack Bosstock's a rental for sure. I think if you need cash, you could take the punt. If he gets 50-50 in his next two games, you can sell him for about 160k more in round 18 to a keeper, potentially like a Jacob Carraz. Look, I did the same thing with Azarko the week before with his break even, so I can see why people are doing it, but I definitely believe a lot more in Azarko than Bosstock just because of the goal kicking.
It's just too many trades for me. I don't like fiddling around with these mid-range guys who just make quick cash. Let's do this week's best bets powered by Better. The big news, I think, is that the Broncos are paying $1.50, which is quite short odds, up against the Sharks, who are $2.60. I don't think that has factored in the fact that Payne Haas almost got ruled out of Origin. By the time you're watching this, maybe the markets have been corrected, but I'm just going to go straight out Sharks to win that one at $2.60. I think that's a really good bet. Hopefully you can get in pretty quickly before the markets change.
Yeah, I think that's a great bet. The odds makers for that, I would just question whether or not they've watched Broncos other than last week.
Yeah.
Because they've been pretty rubbish for a while.
Yeah.
I know that Walsh back seems to lift them, much like getting Mam back has improved them, but albeit they lost their first 2 games with Mam. So yeah, I really like that bet. My best bet of the week is actually Seb Chris anytime try scorer for $2.62. Now, this will prove my bias. Those watching on the video can see my Tigers jumper.
Yes.
But it's more than likely for me that the Tigers will be without Jerome Luai. And on that right edge defensively that Chris will be running at is Heath Mason, who's only playing his 5th game of first grade in the front line. All his other games have come at fullback. He's playing 5'8" now. So him defending on that edge, I think, is somewhere that will be targeted heavily. And Chris has scored a lot of tries this year, so I'm backing him to get one this week.
Good call. I like that. Very nice little statistical analysis there. What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. Pod of the week time. You've always got a nice little left field one for us. What are you thinking?
Yeah, look, this one is probably one that people are catching on to, but it's Roger Tuivasa-Sheck at the New Zealand Warriors. He's 572k, 3-round average of 75, and his base and power average is around the low 40s, which is pretty solid. I think what we're seeing with the Warriors by this time of the season is that they're kind of the real deal. They are beating teams. They're well entrenched in the top 4, and I don't really see that changing. And as such, their draw's good. They're going to enter most of these games as favourites at the end of the season. They've also got a lot of games at home at Go Meter Stadium in Auckland, which is a very tough prospect for travelling teams. The left wing at the New Zealand Warriors has scored 11 times so far this year. They haven't all been Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, but it has been a consistent gold mine for people on that edge. So he's not necessarily going to have this super high, sexy ceiling where he's going to be banging out these 150s, but because of his work rate and because of that try-scoring ability, I think he's a decent guy to pick up into your CTWs. Doesn't play round 18, but will play all the mini-buys.
I like that very much. My pod is Zack Lomax, and you've kind of spiked this one a little bit with your chat that have been struggling after coming back from that foot injury. But the thing to point out there is that his work rate is still very good.
Yep.
His buy schedule is not great given that he plays Origin, but it's actually the best buy schedule that you can get for an Origin player. I think he does back up this weekend to try and make amends for what happened in Origin. Don't know if he backs up after the final Origin. We'll have to wait and see. But I still think at that price and in the position, he will still end up as one of the best guys in that slot. So a sneaky little pod, particularly for head-to-head players and also for overall players.
Yeah, look, it's never really a bad time to buy Lomax. His floor is around that 60, given his base and power and the goal kicking. The upside may be a little bit capped without Moses, who's so good for their attack. But tell you what, the last time they trotted out Dean Hawkins, he played like a future immortal. So
yes,
it might not be the worst shout. And I do hope he plays for my team as well.
On to cheapies. So I mentioned this before. A lot of people are going for guys like Jack Bosstock or a mid-ranger like Britton Nickera, guys like that to free up cash. You can even free up cash by selling guns like Cleary, etc. I still think the best way to free up cash is to go for a genuine cheapie. Unfortunately, we don't really have too many genuine options this week, so we're going to run through a couple. Talakai with Iro and Mweni Hiroti both injured. He's not quite a bottom dollar cheapie, just over 300k, so borderline cheapie. The BE is 14, but he should get a decent crack at that left centre spot there at the Sharks, albeit it seems like a cursed left centre spot at the Sharks.
Yeah, it does. It's not without risk because of the potential that he could move back to the bench at any moment and become that AE nightmare. If you've got Trav said, then I actually really like it because we know that at his best, he can average 65 at the position and put him in that gun category, which for 300k, particularly with his dual, is going to be super handy. If you've got the trades, do it. For me personally, I don't, so I'm avoiding. But yeah, it's hard to knock. He is an amazing player. I think his outside man, Ronaldo Mulatalo, is also going to benefit from him being there and those silky hands.
Yeah, he does have real good hands for a big man. On to Jed Stewart. So I actually think he's a better buyer than people give him credit for this week. The job security is great because they've got Savelio Tamale out long term, 10 to 12 weeks. It's a long time. So Jed Stewart theoretically has that spot for 3 months. The issue is it's only his first game of first grade this week, so you're basically signing up sight unseen unless you've been watching reserve grade. He's the son of Ricky Stewart, of course, so he's probably got some pretty good coaching under his belt. He's probably a pretty intense character as well. I actually think he is the cheapie of the week, even though I've never seen him play before. His stats look pretty decent. He does make quite a few runs and tackle busts, that sort of thing. He looked pretty good in the preseason. I don't hate just going early on Jed Stewart.
Yeah, I don't mind it. His cash rises, provided he doesn't get dropped, are going to start happening in that round 18 buy. Yeah. And he'll be super popular then as a way when everyone's got 3 trades to free up cash. Yeah. Look, there's probably a little bit of the Nathan Lawson's about it in the sense that he could just come out and average 20s and he won't make much money. But as a way to free up money, I like it better than Talakai because firstly, he's bottom dollar. And secondly, when Tamale does come back, he's not going to be on the bench. He's going to be out of the team, so he can just become enough for
No AE Nightmare, exactly. On to a guy who you pointed out before, Alan Fitzgibbon, who I actually owned in draft for 1 week at the start of the year. He scored a try, banged out 50-odd. He looks pretty likely. I think he looks like a pretty serious player. He has been compared to Josh Adokar. He is not a young gun. He's in his mid-20s. He's been around for a while. He's been building up for this for a long time, which I like in a cheapie because you know they've got that experience under their belt. 250 odd K, and it looks like Brian Kelly has been dropped.
Yep. Yeah, so we're at the annual time of the year where Kelly gets his kick up the butt, which is funny. So look, again, there is a little bit of risk just based on job security, but what I like about Fitzgibbon is he's got that electric pace of wingers, and his highlights have been all over social media for years because he himself is a pretty prolific TikToker. But secondly, he's got a little bit of tackle bust about him. Like he's not afraid of contact, and he goes looking for it. So he's still going to be finding his way to best use his physicality in his body in first grade. So it might take him a little bit of time there, but he's a good finisher, as we saw on the weekend. So I don't mind it as a bit of a sneaky one. He doesn't play around 18, but he plays all the mini buys.
The other one to point out is Josiah Carani from the Broncos. He's played that 1 game, scored 88 points, sensational. The issue, of course, if they got Selwyn Cobbo, who, a bit like Brian Kelly, has got to kick up the backside, and he could come back into the team at any point. He's only played the 1 game too, so you don't need to get on this week. With those job security issues and the fact he's only played 1 game, I've got him down the list a little bit, but definitely keep an eye on him this weekend. Yeah,
I like the look of him for next week. I like the look of him in draft comps as well, given he's been named. I had a look at Cobbo's stats in Queensland Cup, and he was hardly setting the world alight in that competition. He's still making a few errors, giving away penalties and missing tackles, which is probably not what they send him down there for. But yeah, good player, and particularly that left edge. I think it's 13 tries for the Broncos on that left edge. Right. It's the most of any position in SuperCoach. So he's going to get across the line.
On to captaincy. So big call to make this week. I'll point out that if you own James Tedesco, you pretty much 100% have to captain him. He's already up to 55% captaincy. I can't argue against that. Can you? Plays pretty late in the round. Pretty good matchup, and it's at home, Allianz Stadium. He does do his best work there.
That's it, and we saw how poor the Cows were without their Origin contingent last week. They got absolutely smacked, and a lot of their boys played some big minutes last night too in Reece Robson, Ruben Cotter, so you're just not sure if they're going to back up. I've got him as my current C. My VC, however, is on Ryan Pappenhausen for similar reasons. Souths are in the wars with their injury toll at the moment. Not sure if Latrell backs up. You sit there, you watch Latrell, you want him to do more work, but he always does look tired when he's out there for the Blues, and his touches are genuinely good. But if he misses out, just given particularly his soft tissue issues at the start of the season and that long flight, then all systems go for a Pappy VC.
The issue I've got with Pappenhausen is that they're playing away this weekend, aren't they? It's at, is it at Accor?
It is at Accor Stadium.
Accor, yeah. So I've got some stats on Pappenhausen. He's averaging mid-60s away from home this year, and at home he's averaging 121.
Yeah, nice.
So that worries me a little bit that he doesn't travel that well. He's a bit of a hometown bully over there.
Yeah.
When he's playing at AV Park, I pretty much always captain him. But away, I think I'm going to go against the crowd on this one. He is the most popular VC. I think I'll go for someone else.
Yeah, nice. I don't mind that. Look, I've also heard a few rumours potentially he's scared of the dark as well. He likes those day games.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But look, I think just with Pappenhausen, what you get is ceiling, right? Like you could put it on Hughes potentially in the same game, and he's got to do a lot of work to get up to that 100, 105, 120 point that you want to loop, particularly with Tedesco's matchup. But like Pappy can, click his heels and go 180, which few people can do. So I don't mind it, but look, there's always other options. We know Terrell May, particularly that Tigers bench as it stands at the moment, he's going to play big minutes. So he's always a good shout too.
Right, well, that is our preview podcast. We took in all the post-Origin action. Big thanks to Max Bryden. No late mail podcast this week, given that we're already doing this on Thursday anyway. So we'll catch you next week for the Teams podcast. We'll see you then.